Being here. I'm Savannah Barrett. I work as the director of the Kentucky Rural Urban Exchange. There are 50 Kentuckians from 22 counties around the state that are here today with y'all. Will you raise your hand if you're a RUXer? So Russell neighbors, they are here to hear from you, to hear the stories of Russell, to help you celebrate this incredible neighborhood. We are just so grateful to be here with you today. We're really thankful to Natalie and to the Western Library and Louisville Free Public Library System for letting us come and be a part of this. Also really thankful to Fund for the Arts and to Kate for being in this planning process with us this whole time, for bringing so many incredible artists from around Louisville to the block party. Give it up for the artists. I'm really grateful to the Louisville Story Program for collaborating with us. We were going to do a narrative stage, and then we just realized, y'all already wrote incredible chapters about your experiences in these communities. Let's hear those chapters. So don't forget to buy a book. I don't know if they can say that, but it's an amazing book. You got to buy it. The last thing I'll just share is we'd love for you all to join us. We brought RUXers here to hear your stories from Russell today. Immediately after this panel, we'll go downstairs and we'll share stories from around Kentucky about our neighborhoods and the places we love. And anybody here today, that means you. We'd love for you to join us. We'll just go around and tell stories for about an hour. It'll be really fun. I promise it'll be worth your while. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Joe Manning with Louisville Story Program.
All right. Thanks, Savannah. Thank you all for being here. This is going to be fantastic. My name's Joe Manning. I'm the Deputy Director of the Louisville Story Program. I'll just talk for a second about Louisville Story Program and the amazing work that these authors have done on the new book, If You Write Me a Letter, Send It Here. We have a booth right back there. The book is an anthology, a documentary of the experiences and lives of folks who grew up in Russell or who otherwise have a stake in this area of Louisville. It's a really incredible document, but let me first tell you about Louisville Story Program. We're a literary arts outreach nonprofit, and our mission is to amplify unheard voices, unheard stories, untold stories in Louisville. This is a big city, and there are a lot of opportunities for stories and the lives that make this city so important to kind of go under the radar. So we take it as our mission to reach out to folks in the community and put those voices and stories into really, really fantastically produced books, radio programs, and exhibits. And as you may or may not know, a lot of y'all obviously know that Russell's seeing a lot of change right now. There's a lot going on the past 5-10 years. This is one of the most historically significant areas in the city of Louisville, especially for the Black experience and for Black culture in Louisville. And so with so much change going on right now, Beecher Terrace coming down and being built back up, about $1 billion by some accounting of new investment in West Louisville, much of it in Russell. We determined that it was self-evident to us that this was the moment to really document this moment in Louisville's history and West Louisville's history as this change is going on. It's super significant and very important to us. So we reached out to and made friends with and spent 3 years working with 26 authors in the Russell community. We conducted recursive oral history interviews with them, then collaboratively edited those interviews into the book. Brother Blue, you got that book? I want to show everybody. Into the book that is back there at the booth right there. It's a really beautiful book, and their voices are as impactful and important as they could be. And as I was going to say, there's a lot of change coming into Louisville, but change is something that also happens every day in very small ways. From one person to another, from one institution to another, from one neighbor to another. Change happens when we decide to do something and then implement that plan. And I'm really glad to have these 3 particular authors today because these are folks who had an idea for change in their life and then just did it. We're going to hear excerpts from their chapters, small sections. They are fantastically told stories, y'all. To be honest, when I tell people about Louisville Story Program sometimes, I think that they think we're gonna write some things down and go run them off in the principal's office or something. But check this book out. It's really beautiful, and their stories are extremely well told. We'll talk a little bit about the process of writing this book after we hear from the authors. But without further ado, I get to shut my mouth, and we're going to hear from the authors of this book. Please give a big round of applause for Brother McDaniel Blewett, Demetrius McDowell, and Natalie Woods. All right, you got what you need?
Yes, sir. I can sit down and do what's stand up.
Okay. All right, McDaniel Blewett is the founder and director of the West Louisville Academy of Performing Arts, formerly known as the West Louisville Boys and Girls Choir, a remarkable and highly achieved musician who traveled all over playing with some of the heaviest hitters in the world. Stevie Wonder, for instance. And he came back home. He came back to Russell to do his work. This is where he belongs, and I'm so grateful to have known him. Thank you. Thank you.
My music education started in a living room with my mom when I was just a kid. I'd sit on the bench while she was playing, trying to learn to do what she was doing. My ear became really attuned to what she was hearing and playing. I took piano lessons and trumpet lessons. Music was all I ever really wanted to do. When I was 20 years old, my group, the Continentals, won a contest for 2 weeks expenses paid to Montreal Expo in Montreal, Canada. They were looking for raw talent to play the showcase and also back up other artists who didn't have their own bands. We got to Montreal and it was fire. Musicians everywhere. We were some of the hottest young cats up there at the time. We backed up 5 or 6 acts at the expo. Montreal is when we got, when we got connected to Motown, and we became the backing group for Edwin Starr, who was getting ready to release his hit song, War. Any of y'all know about war? Raise your hand, okay. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing, that's right. That record sold 3 million copies in just a few months. Motown didn't have anything like that. Marvin Gaye nor the Temptations. We ended up touring with Heaven Star on and off for about 2.5 years. That was an eye-opening experience for me. Understand, I had been plucked out of a country town in East Kentucky. Back up and back, change that. In East Texas. And all of a sudden I was playing huge arenas with big name artists from around the world. Real movers and shakers of soul music and R&B in America. One night my parents came out to show in Houston. I said, I can't believe it. Dad's coming to hear me commit the cardinal sin. We were a religious family, yes we are. Not that he would ever say anything to me like that. After the show, Dad did say, "That's pretty fast lane stuff, son, out there." I said, "Yes, sir, Daddy." He says, "Pretty fast lane. Get back into school, son, as soon as you can. If you need some help, call me. I'll help you." Dad never would judge me, but I knew what he stood for, and what I was doing certainly did not reflect that. My mom had played clubs with Sammy Davis Jr. and many of the artists of the early 50s when she was younger. She understood the nightlife and would tell me, if you spend your time with people who are upward thinkers, they'll rub off on you. But some people don't recover from the nightlife and the fast pace that you're living. I'm change you. I don't want you to be put out there with people who you're looking for with no ambition. She asked me in Houston, "Are you staying healthy?" I said, "I think so, Mama. But I'm having an inner conflict between my lifestyle and what I was taught as a kid." So I had this little secret prayer that I'd say to the Lord. I'd say, "Lord," unquote, "Lord, playing music is all I've ever wanted to do. It gives me great joy. And I know I'm not really living like the book says, and out here on the road. I didn't make myself like this. This is something I've got to do. You made me," I said. "Tell me what. I tell you what. Let's make a deal." Isn't that like us? We're going to make a deal with God. Make a deal. And you watch over my soul while I'm gone, and let me live out what's in me. I'll give you the rest of my time when I get back. And I thought it this way. God said, quote, "You do what you gotta do, and when you get through, I want you to come back and help kids do what they are trying to do." So I knew I had to come back. That was a part of the arrangement. It was a kind of winding road, but in 1989, I started the West Louisville Boys Choir out of my church, Moore Temple, Church of God in Christ, and 19th and Cedar. I told Bishop Moore that I would teach young boys how to be young men, get them engaged in the church instead of being out there doing something they shouldn't in the streets. That's been 34 years ago, and we've had thousands of kids participate. We've changed the name to West Louisville Performing Arts Academy in 1990. Kids gravitate to music, and I think the idea of them getting enough courage to take on an instrument or learn to sing and perform is monumental. My real joy with kids is not directing the choir or writing the songs or rehearsing them. It's seeing the compassion that develops within the group. When I have thought about the arrangement I made with the Lord, where I asked him to protect me, and I said I'd come back someday, I know I was in the right place, doing what I should be doing, what I'm put here to do, children helping children. Taking the experiences of the music I've learned and helping kids pull up, do better, and make better lives for themselves. And I'm gonna sit down and tell the rest of this.
Thanks, McDaniel. Well, thanks, McDaniel. All right, I'll try this one. Thanks to McDaniel Blewett. It's a fantastic chapter, and he's just such a wise member of our community. I've learned so much. I got to tell y'all, I have about the coolest job I could have ever made for myself. Take this back. I just get to hang out in my community with totally remarkable people, which is to say, anybody that I can come across. Honestly, that's one of the most important parts of my job that I can share with you. Is that even though there are 26 incredible people who wrote this book, it really could have been any 26 people that I came across in this neighborhood or any other neighborhood. Because when we take the time to listen to one another and to be open with one another, to tell and to receive, guys, everybody out here is living this remarkable life. Every single person that you interact with is having a fully three-dimensional experience in this world. And when we listen to them and when we give each other the sort of the dignity that we share with one another, there's an opportunity to hear a whole lot. So thanks again to Brother Blewett. And now we're going to hear from my friend Demetrius McDowell, who's the founder of Bosses Not Bangers, who has a tent back there. He's going to read an excerpt from his chapter, which is extraordinarily frank and super important in this moment for us to hear in this city. In a little while, we'll hear a little bit more about how Bosses Not Bangers got started, but I'm gonna hand it over to my friend Demetrius McDowell.
Hey, how y'all doing? There's this thing we say, being black is dangerous, but man, it's lit. In the projects, even though you might have to duck a few bullets, be cautious of who you talk to and where you walk, you're still gonna have the time of your life. As y'all can see, the projects used to be across the street and here we all are having fun. But there's different parts of my childhood that I wouldn't take back. Still, I feel like black kids who come up in this scene of PTSD that we don't even notice. As kids, we see too much, we grow up too fast. Not to take anything away from middle class because their parents worked hard. I can't take anything away from people who did what they were supposed to do. But I don't have those examples. For a lot of us kids, we don't have those examples. And for us, it's screw that, give me a bag. I'm gonna sell some dope and get some money and empower myself. Well, a month after my 18th birthday, I caught a robbery charge. I held my newborn son. He was born on February 10th. I got locked up 2 weeks later. For the next 10 years, I was either selling drugs or incarcerated. My daughter was born a month after my son. I was locked up. She was born on March 28th. That's my whole adult life since I was 18. I lost a lot before I ever won. Missed 4 years at the beginning of my kids' lives. How much is enough to reach your ultimate goal? Are you willing to pay with your life for your freedom? So at 35 years old, I just stopped cold turkey and worked out. It worked out, as y'all can see. I'm still in disbelief sometimes. It worked out that I did stop cold turkey. So I was done with the streets. I don't miss the money. I know how to take it and make it illegal. It was definitely something that I had to overcome. It definitely is a mental health when you get caught up into the type of lifestyle. I did some violence interrupted work right out of the YMCA. That was my first job at, doing something positive and trying to change my life. I had some ideas, was getting into, I wanted to implement. I thought, let me see how I could translate what I used to do, selling dope, and maneuver through the streets into a program consistent of dealing with people from the streets, building fellowship, leading kids away from the lifestyle I used to lead. At that point, I was out of the game. I have legitimate income. I own my own stuff. Literally, I'm really a boss. I'm not a gangbanger. I'm not a dope dealer, so that's where I came up with the name Bosses Not Bangers. My job as Bosses Not Bangers is to soften up the youth who come from the same background I come from. We get those type, my type, we get discouraged when we talk to educated people because we don't feel like we fit in and belong in the same rooms. We can only relate to the environment that we come from. Somebody like me, being on the inside, can peek my head in and say, come on in, the water's fine. They're giving out resources here. I was leading the horse to water, letting them know that I'm always here, and it became a thing. It's hard to stop somebody from drug dealing because it's definitely lucrative. When you're coming from a starving household and you don't have anything in the refrigerator, how do you tell somebody not to eat that steak? But a lot of our kids are trying to adopt the gangster lifestyle without any idea what it's really about, because they can be a gangster on social media and then come out of here and mess around and get into an argument or a shootout. What comes behind that is jail or death. I turned Bosses Not Bangers into an outreach organization to get rid of that whole cliche about being a product of my environment, which is how we justify some of our wrongdoing. I took a lot from the streets and I'm ready to give a little back. I can't say I can repay for all the mischief that I got into, but I want to change the perspectives of the youth in our community. If I'm willing to talk to some kids, hire me. That's a direct statement. Hire me if I'm willing to talk to them. because they're not going to talk to you. You don't look like them, you don't talk like them, you don't understand them. If they have drug addicted parents or neglected by their mothers or fathers, or just have absent fathers, that's the part I can relate to. Instead of resenting adults for not being there or lying to them, they're listening to me. And I'm teaching them to take responsibility for their actions, to think and to tighten up. I'm not a stranger in these neighborhoods. Youth development is my job now.
Thanks, Demetrius. I was walking around Russell looking for people to talk to. Demetrius is a real self-starter, as you can tell, way more than you can tell. I walked into the YMCA because this is such an incredibly significant institution in this area and in this city. There's a guy sitting at the front desk, and I told him what I was up to. Like, we're gonna make a documentary book about the Russell area. We're looking for folks to talk to. He said, you came to the right place. I'll be right back. And went and got me some Bosses and Bangers materials. He said, let's meet up next week. Let's talk. And we did that, and it was a really, really beautiful conversation. I'm really grateful to Demetrius. Thank you, man, for being here. Speaking of super important institutions in our city, let me just go ahead and say we're so grateful to be here in between the YMCA and Western Branch Library for the Russell Block Party. Let's give it up for the Block Party. Let's give it up for Fun for the Arts and Kate Gibson for helping to put this on. Let's give it up for the Rural Urban Exchange for inviting LSP. It's a really fantastic program. Please do come to the Story Circle downstairs afterwards. The Western Branch Library, as our next guest will tell you, has really been at the center of intellectual life in West Louisville for a very long time. Y'all, please give a big round of applause to Natalie Woods, who's the manager of the Western Branch Library, who is such an important part of this community.
Hello, everyone. I'm back up here again. I have been putting on this block party now since I've been the manager here, going into my 7th year. And I've had several people tell me that they have really enjoyed this one the most. Oh, as the tent starts to move. So I'm really glad to have you all here today. When I was a kid, I always loved books. My parents brought me boatloads of them, and I would sit and read all the time. My family had a premonition about what I was going to be later in life. She's going to grow up to be a librarian, they'd say. Well, I've been in the library system for over 30 years now. One day, yes, because I'm saying. Okay. One day, maybe 10 years ago, the manager of my department said, I'm going to give you this project. We're in the process of digitizing some documents. Would you mind to transcribe them when you have time? She gave me this folder of the papers of Reverend Thomas Fontainebleau, the first African American in the United States to head a library, this library. It took me a while to get the hang of reading his penmanship. Is it an S or a P? But as I sat back there, get some feedback. As I sat back there reading these pages, I realized this man was ahead of his time. He was writing about the same approaches to library services that we think about today. He wasn't a trained librarian when he was hired for the job. You can only imagine trying to start the first Black library in America and figuring out how to run it as smoothly as possible on your own. His vision for the Western Library was that it would be a center for the community. At that time, if you were Black, you had no place to go. You couldn't even go to the library to read. That's why Western was created. If you look at some of the pictures, you see the kids dressed to the nines and hats and everything, just clamoring for books on the table. The tables were packed with kids reading books. This is where everybody went. This was the community center. The Western Branch was so successful that Reverend Blue also instituted a library training program here. If you were Black at that time, you couldn't go to a library school. So he created one here at the Western Branch, and people from all over the South came to be trained and to provide library services. I didn't know why I was chosen to transcribe Reverend Blue's papers. But I feel like things happen for a reason. God puts you in the right spot. I spent a lot of time with Reverend Blue's papers, and reading them rekindled my interest in going back to school. I said, you know what? I want to go to library school. I got a master's in library science, and eventually I applied to be a branch manager at Western, and it's been the greatest blessing since I've been here. I'm still working on Reverend Blue's papers, which are now housed in our archive in the basement. It's a wonderful archive housing the majority of Black history in Louisville's library system. My aim for the African American archives at Western Branch Library is to preserve the history in the archives before it crumbles on me and make it available to the public. Everything in the archive is relevant to the community because it is our history. It's the city's history. When I went to interview for this job, I walked in with a report in my hand and told them my vision for Western. This library needs to get back to its roots as a center for our community. That's what Reverend Blue's vision was for this branch. Our website says that Western Library is a separate flame, but we haven't been separate from the rest of the library system for a while. What about the importance of Western's history? We used to have a block party, but haven't had it for years and years. Maybe we need to bring that back. How come nobody's brought back the Cotter Cup? The storytelling competition that we just gave awards away this morning for, by the way, that Reverend Blue set up in the early 1900s. What are we doing with the archives that's sitting down here? A lot of people get caught up in thinking about libraries of just books, but in some ways, the library functions as a community center going all the way back to Western's roots. Reverend Blue wanted to provide services for the betterment of our people. And every single day, that's what the library as a whole should be striving to do. I train my staff to pay attention, to listen to the community. I have a note on my computer that says programming with a purpose. Any programming that I do here will have a purpose. I used to think, wouldn't it be funny if I ended up at Western? And now I'm walking in Reverend Blue's shoes. I'm in the exact same position that he was. He just paved the way for me, and I make sure he's honored daily. I'm making sure Western goes back to its roots of what he envisioned here.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I just can't say how much it's meant to me to get to know these folks. And you've heard a little bit of their stories. It's just an excerpt that you've just heard. There's a lot more to know about these folks, just like there's a lot more to know about anybody you come across on any day you're walking down the street. So right now I'd like to open up sort of a panel discussion, a conversation to hear a little bit more from these authors about their experiences and how they ended up doing the work that they do in Louisville and in Russell. And again, please make sure to consider coming downstairs afterwards and sharing some of your experiences in the story circle that the Rural Urban Exchange is going to lead. But right now, I guess what strikes me about the excerpts that we've just read, I'll get that book back there. What strikes me about those excerpts is that we're hearing from folks who had a moment of realization, had sort of a vision once, and that's guided the way that they have done their work in the world, and the way that they've responded to their experiences, how they move around in the world, which is not the case for everybody. So that's the sort of unifying element of all of these particular stories. Additionally, the work that y'all do with kids. So to get this conversation started, I wonder if we can talk about the work that you do with young folks and what you hope to impart to them. So I'll just kind of go around a little bit and ask, like Brother Blewett, you've been working for, what'd you say, 37 years with the choir?
34.
Is that microphone on?
34 years.
Great. What is it that you hope that your students walk away with?
All of them bring to the table a plethora of major talents that I don't have. What I look forward to is seeing them go and become the very best they can be at what they do. And I don't just try to just be like Joe or like me. And then to this point, and years later, we've found that any number of youngsters have become opera singers, some are recording artists, some have their own labels, and that's one of the fringes of being an artist. You want to let other folks hear what you're doing. And if it's good enough, you'll share it with people other than in your neighborhood. It'll get around the world. And I think that the other piece is that music has always had a way of bringing people together. Children get the chance to have friends because of the instrument they play. It's kind of hard to say it that way, but if you play trumpet and I play clarinet, oh, we're gonna get along fine. In fact, my wife played clarinet, and look, here we've been married now 50 years. Amen, somebody. Been a great journey for me, but I just think, according to that question, Joe, I'd like to see them become productive, not just to a world, but to your community, to the place where you got started. See, sometimes the definition gets a little cloudy when we talk about community. It's not me being successful or you or that's individual, that's exclusive.
Right.
But when you talk about community, you say, I've done well, but I got a whole plethora of friends and family that's still walking around in my community.
That's right.
When they get a chance to get that big step they're waiting on, and success comes and knocks at the door, that's what I want to see happen.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, I think you really just put your finger on it. That's yet another unifying element, and not something that, everyone is called to do, to identify that there are people around you that could use something, and that what you have to offer might be that thing. Let me ask you, Demetrius, you just read a small excerpt of your chapter, which is so, like I said, so important for people to read. I really believe that it is a very impactful perspective, especially in this moment. You could have done a lot of things in your life. Will you talk a little bit about, there was a few moments some years ago when you just had a realization, like some ideas came to you about what could be next for you. Can you tell us the story of what that was?
Well, I really can't say what things I came up with, but I can just say at this point, right now in this moment, listening to these two individuals coming from a different perspective that I came from, seeing a vision and chasing it from their perspective, we kind of just really told each other's story. And some people would take my experience to be non-traditional when it comes into the work that I'm doing. And in my lifetime, 43 years old, I never had an individual who was an influence in my neighborhood turn around a 180 and do a positive thing and actually try to get other people to come along changing a narrative. I haven't had that, so I knew my calling, which is from God. I definitely give him all credit to me seeing things different, because I would have just been doing the same old things in my neighborhood. So as I got into the work, I started feeling better about what I was doing for other people. Like he said, it wasn't about me no more, because I exhausted my own finances and cashed in some of the material things that I had to make my program work. And that definitely let me know that I changed the perspective of, the bling bling and the cars and the things that I was valuing at one point. I think I get more value out of people when I'm able to help somebody. So Bosses Not Bangers is a proactive. It's just me trying to be productive and getting ahead of the issues and the road that I went down. If I can stop one of these young fellows or females from going down that road, then everything that I envisioned and I saw happening will happen. So,
man, it's so important to hear right now. And Natalie, what about you? This morning, like you said, you gave away another Cotter Cup. How many since you got to Western?
We started it in 2021.
Okay, so there used to be a Cotter Cup here at Western Branch, and then there wasn't for a long time. Why is it important now? What's it good for, to tell our stories or to write things down and share them with others?
It gives the youth the opportunity to express themselves in a way that they might not through poetry. So as Bernard Clay is sitting right here, he's been one of my judges, and he helped me with the Cotter Cup last year presenting. it's extremely important and to see the kids' faces when they hear their words read back to them that they wrote, and having that part of expression. When the Carter Cup originally started, it was a storytelling contest, so the kids who went to story time, whoever could recite those stories the best won the Carter Cup. But when I decided to bring it back, I wanted to honor Professor Carter and make it a poetry writing contest for elementary, middle, and high school students to have an outlet to share their experiences and say things that they may not say otherwise. And the writing has just been phenomenal. So it's extremely important for them to have that outlet.
Sure, amen to that. You don't have to convince me of that. I'm super curious to hear from y'all. I'm going to switch gears a little bit because, let's see. I don't know if any of y'all were published authors before we put this book out. So could you reflect a little bit on what it's meant for you to go through this process? And I'll foreground that by saying that the process can be pretty rigorous. I mean, how many times did I call you all or text you all? Like, seriously, Demetrius, how many times do you think you and I talked on the phone?
It's been over 30 times, and being that you just said it was 3 years, time sure does fly.
Yeah, we had a good time. I mean, yeah, this is not a light touch process, folks. It really did take a long time, and the proof is in the work, the words on the page. So, if y'all, I mean, I actually haven't heard from y'all yet. What was it like to publish a book, to publish your story, and to present it to your community? I'd really be interested to hear kind of a frank assessment of the process.
Well, being that I'm up here with 3 professionals and y'all always facilitate or design programming, and this is y'all profession, and I'm impressed that I'm even up here on this stage. So that right there is enough for me, and just being taken serious in something that my vision being taken serious, and to be put in a book, I'm humble.
Not as humble as I am, man, honestly. What about you guys?
Well, I'd just like to add to what he just said. It is an humbling time. First time you came to see me, I was in camp, I think, wasn't it? And I said, well, I'll just make a little time and then I'll get rid of this and we'll move on. He calls back the next day. And the next week, can I call you at home, he says. I said, just well to everybody else. But I found out that Joe has a very special touch when it comes down to writing, and he knows how to dig stuff out of you. He dug some things out of me, just a conversation that I haven't talked about in 30 years. But that was great information, Joe. I appreciate you, and by the way, this is the professional, okay?
Shoot. I told him when I first met him, like, I was coming out of, some grieving stages. Yeah. And that 2 hours that we talked, it was almost like counseling. So I appreciate it. The free hours of counseling, I will not be reimbursing you, but I do.
You've reimbursed me with your friendship and your comradeship, and I mean, I can't say enough about this. I'm the real benefactor in a lot of these situations because I love to hear from people so much. But man, I mean, just like you all are saying, just to sit down and speak and know that you are being heard is one of the most significant transactions that we can have with one another as humans. It really means a lot. And it can be on the page, it can be over the phone, and it just means a lot to me and to all y'all's readers who read this book to hear from you in the ways that you've been so generous. And what about you, Natalie? I mean, you're kind of the representative of an institution, but you also were able to talk about your personal experience and how you got here, which is maybe not something you get to do often.
I don't do the spotlight. I'm up here because I'm trying to shine the light on that, not on this. But to be able to share my experience, to be in a book that's going to be in our archives means I have now left my mark at Western, not just through the other things that I've done, but I am now in print. So that means a whole lot to have that, so that future generations, which is why I'm trying to preserve the history in our archives, can go back and read what it was like for me coming in and trying to make sure to share the importance of it. Because I tell everybody in a heartbeat, If you don't use it, what happens? You lose it. I tell everybody, you got to come in there. You got to come and use it. And not just our branch, but all over, but especially our branch. We faced possible closure twice in the past. While we're going strong right now, we need to ensure that we continue to go strong. And that's why, as much as I don't like I'm an introvert, people don't really know that, being on the stage and being with a microphone in my hand, if it helps me to make sure that the history of that branch is shared, then it was all worth it.
So let's give her a round of applause, everybody. It's so powerful, y'all, to be around people. And when I say the following, I mean it with the greatest dignity that these words can mean. Regular, everyday folk. I'm just blown away by all of the people in our city who are making something happen because it feels like the right thing to do. And we're surrounded by them. We have a few minutes left. I thought I'd open it up to any questions that you all might have for the authors or for me. We only have about 5 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions about the book or anything? No.
Okay, did anybody on stage, did Joe come to y'all house? Joe came to my house a couple of times for this book.
Well, I mean, you have a nice house. It was very accommodating. There we go.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Bailey. I'm from the Kentucky RUX program.
Oh, great.
Yes, I was wondering, for a project like this, making a book with so many different authors, you mentioned going around and asking people, but what was some more of the logistics around that? What was your process to make this happen?
Sure. Thanks. That's an awesome question, Bailey. So the Louisville Story Program has been running for 10 years. This is our 10th year, and it happens that this is our 10th book. We've on average put out a book a year. Thank you. It's the work of a lifetime, and in those 10 years, we've really generated a deep network in this community. We know a lot of people. Once you're part of the RUX family, once you're part of the LSP family, the tendency is to continue to be a part of it. So when we knew we wanted to do a documentary book in Russell, we called our friends and said, who are some folks we should talk to? And then we kind of hit the ground and just started meeting folks, paying attention, and that kind of guides our process. Like I said, though, it could have been kind of any 26 people. I'm so grateful for the friends that I made over the past 3 years working on this book, but it could have been so many people because we're just surrounded by vivid, important stories. And then the process after that is to take the interviews that I've done with these guys, lots of them, turn them into a transcript, start to put it together as a loose narrative, and then collaboratively edit that document with them, right? So I call up McDaniel Blewett and I say, there's this one part we have a little bit missing here where you talked about when you came to Louisville. Oh, you met your wife at U of L and she's a clarinetist? I mean, I think that's a really important detail. We should put that in here. It really moves this section into the next section. It's so iterative. It keeps on going. And you're never all the way done. I mean, we have to press the send button at some point. But you always wish you could do a little bit more, but they're fantastic stories. Anybody else have a question? We have maybe one more minute. All right, y'all. Well, please do give another round of applause to McDaniel Blewett, Demetrius McDowell, and Natalie Woods of the Western Branch. I'm Joe Manning. We're so grateful to the Fund for the Arts and Western Branch and the Rural Urban Exchange. I really recommend that you go downstairs for some of the RUX programming. It's going to be great. And thank you so much. The books are back there if you'd like to check them out. Thank you.
Get your book. I've got mine.
I got mine.
Just so you guys know, story time is still probably taking place downstairs, so they won't be ready just yet. So enjoy what we got going on here. Remember, we have the Western Branch Library Support Association book sale in the back. We have Norton Healthcare on the inside. And we have all kinds of other fun stuff getting ready to come up.